Okay, the next three agenda items for discussion and action ensure governance and administrative support of district goals. Number one, C1 is consider board approval of 1819 district initiatives. District initiatives received at the June 5, 2018 Board and Cabinet Retreat are being submitted to the board for approval. From Superintendent Bonser, would you please present those?
Thank you, President Bender. As we did last year at this same time, the district brought forward, not of course the board goals, those have already been adopted by the board as part of the strategic plan, but those district initiatives for your approval, knowing that in September at the work session, we will bring back and present to you the plan of work. And so tonight is simply an overview of board goals and district initiatives. Some examples of the things that you can expect to see in the plan of work, although by no means this evening is this a comprehensive list of the plan of work, because as you know, last year there were 95 targeted goal areas associated with initiatives and board goals. So I've not attempted to list all those, but I'm just hitting some of the high points this evening so you'll get an idea. So as you remember, of course, from our last strategic plan, the mission of Plano ISD is to provide an excellent education for each student, and then the vision statement from our last strategic plan is shown there for your information. And we have two ongoing district strategic goals while the current strategic plan remains in place and while we start to consider a new strategic plan for the future. And that is to ensure continued improvement in student learning and to ensure the efficient use of resources. And until our new strategic plan is developed, which we anticipate by late fall, those two board goals will remain in place for this school year. So in the area of continuing improvement in student learning, some of the areas that you will see come forth in the plan of work is Dr. Brockman working on talent recruitment. So we're looking more specifically at our hiring processes and how we continue to recruit the most top quality candidates we can for our vacant positions. We'll continue refinement of our district and campus improvement processes. We're going to have some more significant targeting of improvement plans at the district level and at the campus level to close achievement gaps in reading, math, and writing. And then a differentiated support plan from all of our departments supporting campuses at different tiered levels for continued improvement in student learning. And included in that will be the communication plan that will now include student learning reports in all different varieties that will be a separate strand of the district communication plan, so that we're continuing to put student learning data and information in front of the board on a more regular basis. We're continuing with our high reliability schools implementation and support, which is systematic improvement in our student achievement and campus efforts for the most effective schools possible. That includes PLC training and support. PLCs as professional learning communities, and we have a district-wide effort on that as we look at using the professional learning communities as the vehicle to move our campus improvement processes forward. You'll hear a little bit more about the dual language pilot this evening, and we're going to have a report on that in just a moment. We'll continue looking at the expansion of our quality pre-K programs. We'll implement year 2 of the special education strategic plan, and Paula Long is here this evening to give you a brief overview of that. Prepare to launch the Collin Technical Campus, look at continued opportunities for dual credit. We'll look at CTE opportunities and equity for those students and for our special education students, continued expansion of blended learning, and research-based strategies for academic achievement and specifically related to behavior. In the area of utilization of financial resources and budgeting, Randy and his team will continue with training and implementation of our new financial procedures manual. He'll be taking the district back through a zero-based budgeting process, which we have not taken under consideration in the district for several years. Tammy, I think this gets back to some of the things that you've been looking at of really looking at where we're expending our funds and justification and rationale for every expenditure that finds its way into our budget, so that we know from the beginning what the reason is for every single thing, and does it tightly align to the district needs that are out there more specifically. So I think that's a really targeted approach to uncovering all of those things that we want to spend money on versus what we need to spend money on. Execution of the bond projects, the long-term debt plan. Dr. Solomon will be conducting continued facility needs assessments and improvements, and we're having cross-departmental training and capacity building in the business services area. Randy wants to work on that part for his team. In addition, Beth will work on the resources of talent management, how we investigate and document. We will have equity and personnel allocation phase 2. We got some baseline last year, and so we'll be looking more deeply into the equity of how we're allocating personnel resources. Customer service refinement. We're looking continuously at any other safety and security enhancement. And then from Dan's area, network resiliency, video surveillance phase, I can't see if that's a two. I don't have my glasses on. Again, resources, you know, in our plan of work, there's lots of different resources, and so people and communication were some of those. And so Mr. Stolley last year, when we talked about the leadership Plano ISD concept, we're looking at reimagining key communicators to integrate those two pieces. We are looking, as you approved in the budget, a person to work in the communications department in addition to their current staff, so that we can expand our social media presence. We'll be updating some of our district communications and producing a state of the school event. We'll also be working hard in this legislative session, and that feels like a resource of time and effort and risk and money management. We'll continue to update our websites, and this room and the Sockwell Center will have its technology updates and we believe in the fall and throughout the rest of the school year. In commitment to equity, when we look at our district initiatives, this year we again would have 3, and I'll talk a little bit about the one that you're not seeing there. That was there last year. We'll continue our commitment to equity work. I'll talk about that a little more in a second. And our innovative learning and mission-driven culture. But special education, because they've now developed their 3-year strategic plan, we're folding special education back into the academic services plan of work, not as a standalone, but as its own leg of the academic services plan of work instead of a standalone initiative, and they'll be working that strategic plan. We will be adding the 3rd initiative of the district strategic plan, because we think that'll be a huge ongoing effort all this year that will include many, many stakeholders. So we know what commitment to equity is. We've talked about that in the past. Some of the things that will come around the commitment to equity initiative is to look at expansion and definition, distribution, partners, and opportunities for wraparound services. So that will be a large piece of effort that we'll endeavor this year. We're re-looking at what our diversity training looks like, what our equity and personnel allocations look like, what our continued underrepresented groups in advanced academics. If you'll recall last year, that was one of our ongoing goals that we had made partial improvement on, but still some way to go on that. We're continuing to look at the equity of our program placement at the campuses, and especially around the areas of robotics and coding, and in our elementary and middle school campuses as they feed the high schools, so that we are making sure that we have comprehensive programs that are equitable across our district. And then we'll look at our staffing guidelines, again, to continue and to ensure that we have equitable resource based on actual campus needs as part of our expansion of commitment to equity work. In the area of innovative learning and mission-driven culture, You can see on the screen, we'll continue to expand professional learning opportunities and collaboration. We're looking again at our goal-driven evaluation for non-instructional staff. We have a special emphasis in our professional learning this year on ethics and employee wellness. And we feel like the social and emotional health of our employees is equal to that of the social and emotional health of our students. Also, the Employee Services Division is looking at changing and looking again at how they do their PISD onboarding process. And so that'll be exciting work for the district. We're also looking at the development of teacher and campus leadership profiles so that as we continue to try to find the best talent possible, we understand what it is we should be looking for based on the different and varied needs of schools across our district. And then we'll continue to expand our leadership development and capacity building at all levels. Continuing on, high reliability schools and professional learning communities again. We'll develop all the systems, trainings, and communications for class rank and GPA. We will implement the Transformational Schools grant that we received from the state, and that plan will be forthcoming and further information to the board. Dan and his team will continue with technology plans, which is the One2Web Phase 2, AV, LMS enhancements, and Web Desk project in its second phase. In strategic plan, we'll be bringing back to the board this week the timeline of actions that remain for the board and look at the final stages of the work that we have to do together to finalize the vision, the belief statements, and the pillars that we came up with at our first 2 retreats. In addition, we'll be asking the board to submit names and or folks within the community to help serve on the strategic plan team, which will be 50 members, half district personnel, half community members. So we'll be soliciting those dates from you very soon. And with a goal to bring in the community strategic plan team, that large group, mid-October. Our goal is to have progress report to you by November, action teams established by November. The action teams would work November to February. The action teams would present to the strategic plan team in March with a final presentation to you in April. And so that is the nutshell timeline. You'll have a more extended timeline so that for every step of the way you'll know what we need from the board and what the board can expect from the district related to the new strategic plan.
Sarah, in terms of the community members, will each board member pick 3 individuals and then you round off with a few others, or what do you anticipate?
What we thought we would do is try to get, similar to what we did for the GPA committee, is the cross-section of the district to try to make sure that we have representatives from business, from community, from parent groups, so we're strategically crafting who we're looking for in terms of making sure we have a good cross-section within the district, and then letting you help us plug in people that you know who might fit those parameters. And so hopefully, it could be that we ask each board member for 2 or 3. In some cases, depending on that, it could actually be more depending on who you know and who meets those qualities, so that we're really making a good, deep cross-section of the district.
So you will give us a list of these are the type of people that we need,
Yes.
and we'll figure out.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, and I hope that makes sense to everyone.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, as long as it's full representation of the
Yeah.
board,
I
not any
feel
one person.
No, ma'am. The goal would be that everyone gets to contribute to the picture.
I just have one, you've got one, I'm sorry.
Only that I would ask that
Yes.
you adopt the 3 district initiatives for this school year, and then certainly any discussion or questions.
I just have one simple question, I don't wanna go too far with it, I just am curious, what is the video surveillance phase 2? What is that cameras in the hallways or?
That is correct. Currently, we have over 5,000 cameras. We couldn't do all 5,000 in 1 year, so we broke the network up into 3. So we've done about 1/3 of the cameras so far. this next phase is going to be doing another third of the cameras.
And does that somehow tie into law enforcement? Are they able to see into a school building?
They currently can, but we are switching off with them. We're working with their IT department on being able to interactively look from their squad cars. We're not all the way there just yet, but we're working with my counterpart in the IT for the city of Plano
Okay.
as we pull this together.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so we've just received this information regarding these three board initiatives for consideration. Do I have a motion?
Yes,
Yeah,
I
have
move.
one- Sorry, I had just one more quick question.
sorry, go ahead.
And so, back to an earlier slide where we're ensuring continuing improvement in student learning, talk about the differentiated support. You have 3 levels and you have numbers of schools already assigned to that. Based on some of our conversations we've had tonight about how need should be defined, is there flexibility in those specific numbers as you reconsider some of the thought process?
So that particular one, Tammy, is based on their student achievement results. It's based on their STAR test results and the scores that those campuses receive. And so when we come back to the work session in September, when we give the student achievement report, we'll have the information on which campuses fall into which tier of support. And so I don't know if that's different than what you're talking about.
It could be similar as long as, once again, we're looking at absolute number of children and not only failing percentages, because once again, a big campus, you have more kids, even with a lower, slightly lower failing rate, you still have more children who are in need.
And certainly, we can absolutely look at that, because the resources that they need to meet the needs of those students might look different depending on the number of kids.
Okay, any other questions before? Okay, so do I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Trustees approves the 2018-2019 district initiatives as presented.
All right, I have a, do I have a second?
I second.
All right, I have a motion by Angela Powell, a second by Yoram Solomon, that the Board of Trustees approves the 2018-19 district initiatives as presented. Is there any further discussion? All right, hearing none, we now proceed to vote. All in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, motion passes 7-0. All right, next item is C2, where the board will consider approval of the board's advisory committee appointments for the 18-19 school year. Every board member has the opportunity to appoint one person to one of each of 5 committees to serve a 3-year term. We've all received the schedule. If you've not yet had the opportunity to submit names, you can still do so. I can put them on the agenda for the next meeting. But at this point in time, given what we have received, I'd like to present that for your consideration. So do I have a motion?
I'd like to ask a question before that. I was being aware that I think we have a member of the special ed committee that is not listed here. I believe that Dylan Rafferty, who's sitting here in the audience, is a current member with expiration date of, I think it's 2021.
I think it's 2019, 2020, I'm not sure, but I started last year.
So I
That's
think
great.
he's missing
Missing?
from the
Okay,
list.
so who appointed him? Do you know who appointed you, Dylan?
Actually, I think it's David.
Yeah, I think so.
You did? Okay, so let's reflect that in the document, please. Okay, thank you for that correction.
I'm just curious, why is the special ed list so, or not special ed, the gifted and talented list seems really long. I was just curious why. Do we know?
Why is it
Dr.
what?
Hasley can explain that.
At the current time, when parents complete the application or expressing interest in serving on the committee, we've always just taken everyone who's volunteered, and so this year we had a large influx of interest.
All righty.
Moving forward, we might put in a process of selection of some type.
Okay.
One thing that Teresa Biggs is going to do this time is to ask if there's anyone who would want to serve 1, 2, or 3 years, so that if someone wants to come in new and just serve part of the time, that's fine. She does have a lot of work to do, and we'll be developing a lot of subcommittees from this group this year.
Okay. All right, do I have a motion do I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Trustees moves the Board Advisory Committee appointments for 2018, 2019. Should I say as amended? As amended. Okay, that was my question.
Thank you. Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion by Nancy Humphrey, a second by Jerry Chambers, that the Board of Trustees approves the Board's Advisory Committee appointments for 2018-19 as amended. Is there any further discussion? We'll now vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Motion passes unanimously, 7-0. Thank you. The next item is C3. Consider board approval of an amendment to minutes from April 26, 2017, work session meeting minutes. This is an item that trustee David Stolley recognized and asked to be amended, the record, your voting record on a particular item.
Yeah, that's right. This was, Tammy had the record from this sent around a couple weeks ago for our work session, and I realized that the vote was incorrect, and so I just brought it to the attention of.
The vote was correct, it was captured incorrect.
Yes, the record was incorrect.
So after consideration and reflection, consulting with our attorneys and so forth, they recommended to bring the record back for, correction and adoption. So, do I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Trustees approves an amendment to the minutes of the April 26, 2017 work session meeting, amending the record to reflect the following. Trustee Tammy Richards moved that the board moved forward with the construction process of a fourth early childhood. Trustee Marilyn Hinton seconded the motion, which carried 4 against 1, abstained 0, absent 2. David Stolley cast the opposing vote. It is further recommended that the Board of Trustees confirms that this amendment should not change the effect of the board's vote and therefore should not affect the rights of a party.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
I have a motion by Jerry Chambers, a second by David Stolley, that the Board of Trustees approves an amendment to the minutes of April 26, 2017 work session meeting, amending the record to reflect the following. Trustee Tammy Richards moved that the board move forward with the construction process of a fourth early childhood. Trustee Marilyn Hinton seconded the motion, which carried. The result is 4 persons voted for, 1 person against, 0 abstained, 2 persons absent. David Stolley cast the opposing vote. It is further recommended that the Board of Trustees confirms that this amendment should not change the effect of the board's vote and therefore should not affect the rights of any party. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we will now proceed to vote. All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion passes unanimously,
Wait.
7.
I didn't raise my
Oh,
hand.
I'm sorry.
I know.
All
I will
opposed.
have to, no, not opposing.
All abstain.
I'll abstain because I was absent from that meeting.
Thank you. Thank you for that call out. So the motion passes 6-0 with 1 abstention. Now we're to reports. Our first two reports this evening support the district's goal to ensure continued improvement in student learning. Item A1, Special Education 3-Year Strategic Plan. Dr. Katrina Hasley, Assistant Superintendent for Academic Services, will provide a report on the 3-year strategic plan for special education. Dr. Hasley, would you please introduce this report?
My pleasure. Thank you, President Bender. Paula Long, our Executive Director for Special Education Services, as you'll recall, joined us this past summer, and so we had this report originally on the date at about the time she came on board, so we decided to postpone it a bit so she could get her feet wet and get to know people as well as have input. She's going to provide an update and an overview of our 3-year strategic plan for special education, of which we are in the 2nd year. Paula.
Okay, good evening. I want to go ahead and get started by just giving you a little information. I understood that you all were in need of some translation to our special education language. So if you would, I don't know how to advance this. There we go, got it. Oh, there we are. Okay. So I've provided you all some information in the link. Oh, thank you so much. In the link there, I put together a very comprehensive list of acronyms that all relate in some way to special education, so that the mystery is removed to some of the terminology that we use in the field often. So I hope that you will be able to access that folder and those acronyms, so you have whenever people refer to terms in future presentations. I've also included in a folder for you there some information that's provided to parents when their children are tested, are placed in the program, and at every single ARD meeting. It's really good information on the special education program. There's an ARD guide, and then there are also procedural safeguards. So if you ever needed information quickly, the information is in the folder for you. So those are just reference items. I wanted to provide a bit of a recap. In this strategic plan year 1, it actually began with implementation last year. And so these are some of the things that were on the plan for last year. As you know, the Adult Transition Center was built, was actually renovated, and we got off to a great start this year. So that's something that's been completed or is very near completion. The special education team developed a quality indicator checklist for classrooms with children who have more significant needs, behavioral needs in particular. That was implemented and trained last year. Roles and responsibilities for staff was another area that they addressed some or developed some guidance around for campuses. They provided staff training on safety and best practices for responding to behavioral incidents, and actually had a behavior academy this summer for paraprofessionals, teachers, and administrators. They also worked with HR to address recruitment, hiring and retention of special education staff. They did revise the staffing allocation model, and staffing recommendations last spring were made based on some of those revisions. They also had an initiative where for special education classrooms, the Universal Design for Learning strategies were trained and employed for those classrooms. So this is year 2 of the strategic plan. And so what we've done this year, this here, okay. What I'd like to do this year, and our team is engaged in executing, is to take some of the year 1 strategic goals and dig a little bit more deeply. And so I mentioned the quality indicator checklist. So what we're going to do with that this year, it's one thing to develop something and put it out there. It's another to really work with campuses and partner with campuses to go a little bit more deeply with those. And so this year, we are choosing a couple of indicators from that, and we're designing some rubrics for implementation. And so we'll be deploying those to campuses very soon, and engaging throughout the school year in calibration walks with campuses, so that we're actually walking classrooms and teaching them how to use the rubrics and looking for those things. And so we expect to do that each year to take it a little bit more deeply than just training campuses. We're also providing campus implementation support for those rubrics and that checklist. And we're partnering with our gen ed counterparts as a part of some of the board initiatives, the district initiatives. Continuing the Summer Behavior Academy, it was very successful. And so we've debriefed that and gotten some feedback, and we'll be continuing that academy this summer. So that's how we're going to sustain and grow the strategies from year 1. So, our new strategies for this particular year, year 2, we will be working with a consultant. We'll be designing some training on the FIE to IEP. Again, those acronyms are in your checklist, but an FIE is a full individual evaluation to an individual education plan. So we're going to connect those two in a more meaningful way and provide teacher training. We'll be designing or teaching teachers how to design individual learning plans for students and connect student strengths to and needs to actual instructional planning. And so because of that, we will be partnering and joining forces with our other departments. Elementary has already been utilizing a planning document, and so it's a really great way to kind of align what we're doing to some other things that are happening in the district. So we'll be partnering with them also on differentiation and planning. We are going to also be doing designing some training on levels of support. So for the decision-making process, for determining least restrictive environment, and so we'll be rolling that out in the second semester. And one of the other strategies this year is to increase communication involvement opportunities for families of students with special needs. And so our families are heart of what we do, and so that's also a very important piece of our work. The year 3, which would be 19-20, we will be monitoring that staffing as needed based on implementation of the levels of support. So once we roll that out, we'll be able to take some data from that and hopefully more closely align our staffing to the needs of students and recommendations through the ARD process. We're also continuing our collaboration with other departments around differentiation and planning. And we'll be identifying in this school year through our calibration walks and work with campuses, model classrooms and schools to hopefully be able to leverage as learning sites down the road. So that concludes my presentation. Does anyone have any questions?
I do.
Yes, ma'am.
Paula, under strategic plan year 2, new strategies, with the training of teachers with the FIE and IEPs, are you increasing communication to also train parents to understand how to read them too?
That's a great question. And that will be a part of our design, is to actually have some parent training. We have a trainer, is to actually also roll that out to parents. And so as a part of this, we're also going to be working on a way to communicate that out across the district also. So.
Well, these strategies are very good. Thank you.
Oh, yes, ma'am. Thank you.
I have a question. Was the Special Education Committee engaged in the strategic planning process?
The
Advisory Committee?
I'll answer. Paula wasn't here for that.
Yeah.
The advisory committee's goals were really around the Adult Transition Center last year. So that's what their work was about, researching, going and looking at other programs and bringing back ideas for the adult transition. That was their project last year.
Yes. But what I did when I came on board was I have engaged my special ed leadership team in working with this piece, and I also took, I gave campus administrators and the itinerant special ed team an opportunity and central office staff to provide me with some input. So I did conducted a SWOT on the needs of the district. So I did take some input, some feedback from other stakeholders in the district. So.
There's just a great richness of experience from that committee, just recognizing some of the names. And so I think hopefully we could broaden the utilization, because many of them bring their own personal experience. We also, as a board, received a communication, I think it was June the 11th, from a special education parent that was quoting some statistics about how often special education children are engaged in regular classrooms, star passing rates, very quantitative. I'm a quantitative person, so also as part of the strategic planning, are there metrics that you are hoping to achieve?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? Is that part of the plan? you said?
Yes, because
Is
there
the
were some
metrics?
specific metrics that this particular parent called out in terms of how we were performing based versus the state average, how we were performing against peer districts, which in many cases it appeared that we were not exceeding certainly our peers. And so, do you also have some quantitative goals set forth as part of the strategic planning about
Yes.
student achievement of special education children?
Yes, we do. And that's part of our.
That'll be in the plan of work.
Right.
We'll have some
That's part of
instructional and
work.
behavioral goals set. And again, this is just a really high-level look. All embedded here are ways to evaluate, throughout the year, progress towards some of these goals. And couple things I'll say about Paula Long is one of the things that impressed me was her commitment to include parents and get feedback and truly input and work alongside with parents. And also, she dives deep into data and is well aware of the needs that we have.
Tammy, we did have a meeting with that parent as well. So we gathered, she shared a lot of that information and reports with us. I think we're probably talking about the same parent. And so we actually have had communication with her about what her thoughts were and what we could learn from her thinking and her data. She had a lot of information to share with us.
Very great, thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Our next report is on dual language. And again, Dr. Katrina Hasley will provide an introduction to talk about the implementation of the dual language program.
Yes, President Bender. Welcome Tally Gomez, our Executive Director for Multilingual Services, and as you know, she transitioned into this role full-time over the summer as well. And so at our board and cabinet retreat in June, a request was made to provide more information about dual language for the board. And so Tally is bringing that at this time, sort of explaining what dual language is, how it differs from what our past practice has been, and then where we are in our implementation.
Good evening. Thank you for giving me the time this evening to share about dual language. As she just shared, as I go through the presentation this evening, it's going to be organized in 3 parts. The first part is what is bilingual education, a very basic overview that Chapter 89 gives us, and then why we would want to move to dual language, and what is the PISD implementation plan for that. So the first part, as I said, is bilingual education. And right here, what I have are the 4 different options that were given by the state as we look at programming for bilingual education. So that first one that you see, the transitional bilingual or early exit, is the current program that we have at the majority of our campuses. And this program is really modeled to use the native language, which in our case is Spanish, in order to quickly transition into full English proficiency. That can happen between 2 and 5 years of education. The next one, which is transitional bilingual late exit, is very much developed the same as that early exit. It just allows for that native language to happen for a longer period of time. The next one is dual language one-way immersion, and that is what 2 of our campuses is implementing this year in kindergarten, in pre-K and kindergarten, I'm sorry. And dual language really has the goal of servicing students so that they are able to become biliterate and bilingual in both their native language and English, which is the target language I'm going to speak about tonight is Spanish, but can be seen in other languages as well. And then dual language immersion 2-way, the difference with this program is who you're serving. So dual language one-way would serve the same students that would be served in both the transitional bilingual early exit and transitional bilingual late exit. Those students are native Spanish speakers and they qualify for services based on our assessment that's given to them as they become students of ours. The 2-way dual language also brings in students that would be learning that second language as their, so they come in as possibly native English speakers. They could be coming to us as native Chinese Mandarin, but their parents are also interested in them learning Spanish. So you open up that program to other students that can benefit from learning another language from pre-K on. I do want to mention that the same goal is there for both the one-way and two-way dual language to create bilingual and biliterate students. So the next slide, I spoke to this just a little bit, but our transitional bilingual early exit is the program that we use in the majority of our campuses now, and the goal of that is to use the primary language as a resource while acquiring full proficiency in English. What we have opened up at both Memorial and Foreman this year in their pre-K and kinder classrooms is the dual language one way, and the goal of that is full proficiency in primary language as well as English. So I'm going to use myself as an example here, but when you think about using in that transitional bilingual early exit, and we said between 2 and 5 years of education, we're expecting students that are possibly 7 years old, between 7 and 10, to be proficient enough in their native language to then be able to begin using English as their what would be like a native language. And I can say, as I learned Spanish as my second language and was studying linguistics at the university level, that gave me the advantage of being able to use that really strong understanding I had for English in order to obtain my second language. And so I don't have the need to translate in my head. When I want to speak in Spanish, it just comes out, and when I want to speak in English, it just comes out. But what typically happens to our student when we have them transfer at such an early age, they continue to need to translate in their heads, which just really slows down their learning process and their capability of both comprehension and output. Okay. So I'm going to move on now to dual language, which was the second part of this presentation. And what I'd like to talk about here is the why. I think we have evidence both as we look forward shortly in a couple slides to the data from our own district, but then we also have really, really strong studies of large numbers of students across the United States of program evaluations where dual language has outshone the other options for bilingual education. So besides all the research that I'm going to share, I also want to highlight that we recognize ourselves as a very attractive district in this area, but something that has happened is that most of our surrounding districts have already moved to dual language, either one-way or two-way dual language. So what has happened, starting from even just student teachers, in a recent conversation I had with the person that oversees student teachers at Texas A&M Commerce, and I asked why we weren't getting very many bilingual student teachers, it is because of our program model. The students that are coming up right now through the programs, what they want them to be exposed to is that dual language, and so we aren't seeing that placement, which then hurts us in teacher recruitment as well. If you look at Frisco ISD, Allen ISD, Wiley ISD, Prosper ISD, Louisville ISD, and Dallas ISD, they're all offering one- and two-way dual language programs, or one- or two-way dual language programs. Also, as parents have started to contact me about the programs we offer, I can speak to 4 parents that contacted me last week, and when I could not offer the programs that they're looking for, they began to ask me about surrounding districts and where their best choice would be. So I would hope that we could move in the direction of being able to stay competitive and offer what research is telling us to be the strongest model. Okay, so this next slide is one that I think is probably the most common as we look at data around dual language programs or bilingual programs or ESL. But what I want to really focus on here is that this study started with a relatively small group of students, but has continued to stay true, looking over student records of 6.2 million students. So this is a very strong study, and if you look at the dotted line, those are the general education students that have scored there with the blue dotted line. Then if you look right above that, actually the students are outscoring in the one-way dual language program, even those students that are in the general education program. And then if you look up to the very top, that is the two-way dual language program. I do want to point out that right now we are implementing one-way dual language, but as we move forward, we do recognize this data and plan to have more discussion around how we would build and where we would build those two-way dual language programs. That will be something that we have to be very strategic about in order to serve the community that's interested in that.
I find this a very interesting chart, and I was going to ask the question, does two-way dual language hurt the native Spanish speakers? And it appears that that is not the case.
Correct.
So this is very exciting, because this will actually, since unfortunately most of the children Spanish-speaking learning English are often economically disadvantaged as well.
Correct.
If you can bring in native English-speaking children, most likely not economically disadvantaged, that can actually bring great richness to that school.
Mhm.
And so anything we can do that can encourage our middle-class families to consider some of these, right now, more challenged schools, it can be beneficial for both sets of children.
Absolutely. Mhm.
In fact, when we first started talking about dual language, it was my assumption we were doing two-way. I didn't know it was just one way to begin with.
Yes. So part of the reason that we're looking at one way before we move to two-way dual language is we already have a bilingual program in place, so we have teachers that have training in that area. We have to be much more specific and strategic about the training that we give so that they can implement dual language. But as we look towards two-way dual language, we will then be incorporating teachers that possibly have not worked with bilingual students, and we also will be incorporating teachers that have not taught Spanish as a second language. So that will take a lot of staff development to help develop those skills so that they can really truly serve the very best that we can, both sets of students. And I do want to point out all of the research that I showed tonight, including this one, the group of ELLs are almost completely low socioeconomic students. So we're not looking at students that are just like our students. They're very similar in terms of language and socioeconomic backgrounds.
What's the significance of the dashed line at the 50th percentile? Is there significance to that?
That's the gen ed.
What?
That's the
general.
Mm-hmm. It's
achievement line.
Oh,
It's the the achievement line of the general education students. The dotted line at the 50th percentile represents the average performance of native English speakers across the U.S.
okay.
Mm-hmm. There's also another really strong study that was taken out of Houston Independent School District, and it showed the English learners who received 5 years of dual language schooling reaching the 51st percentile on the Stanford 9, whereas the students in their transition bilingual program, which is the one we currently have, are only scoring at the 34th percentile. So again, this shows how with a change of programming, we can service our students better. Okay. So this next slide is data about our own students here in Plano ISD. This was taken from the 2018 STAR results. So what I wanted to show here was something that I think we're all aware of, but the achievement gap that is happening between this group, who is oftentimes dually coded as both language learners and low socioeconomic. But as you see in the orange, you're seeing our all student group. And then if you look at the gray, you're looking at the bilingual students that tested in English. And then if you are looking at the orange or yellowish color, that's the bilingual students that tested in Spanish. So unfortunately, when I look at this, I see that with the exception of a couple places that I can speak more specifically to, we are seeing that our students are not performing close to our all-student group in either English or Spanish, which shows us that They do not have the academic Spanish levels to exceed, nor do they have the academic English language to succeed on our state tests. So I want to point out the 5th grade reading, for example, as I looked more closely at that data, where we see that Spanish group almost at this, only 2 percentage points from our all-student group, which is very different than most of the other grade levels. We had a huge influx of very well-educated students coming to us from Venezuela. So their Spanish was very strong as they came in. We saw that both on their IPT scores and on the Spanish map. And so that score is very much related to those students, which is a very small group, but did make this data look different than we would have expected when we only had our highest group of Spanish testers across the district was in the 40s.
So if a student is a native Spanish speaker, how long do they take the STAR exam in Spanish?
The STAR is available in Spanish up until all the way up through the end of 5th grade. So once they're in 6th grade, the expectation is that they take the STAR in English, and they can use the linguistic accommodations to do that.
Just a funny story. A large concentration of those students actually came to Huffman. We
Yes.
saw an influx of students from Venezuela. My husband coaches now the Huffman 2nd grade soccer team, and he's writing his emails in both English and Spanish, having to leverage his long ago college Spanish and Google Translate.
Yes.
I bet they're really good though, in soccer.
Yes. Learning to play as a team is a little bit harder, but individual skills are high.
We have seen a large influx in Huffman Mitchell and those accepting services going to Daffron. So besides the graph about Plano, again, I want to share other data that was found in a large-scale study done among 23 school districts across 15 states, looking at 2 million student records, and again, it showed that dual language programs can close the achievement gap for English language learners. So this next one is a little bit of about the larger picture of native language instruction. In just a moment, I'll look more closely at literacy instruction in the native language. But what I want to point out here is that, again, this was another study done, but what it did again was show us that the achievement in literacy and other academic subjects was often higher for those students who had longer instruction in both their native language and English instruction. And so what they did here was look at several meta-analysis, and all 5 of those came with the same conclusions, which is very rare, that instruction not only helped in literacy, but helped them in their content areas. And what we see many times with our current program of early exit is that it's not yielding the results we want because of how quickly that transition takes place. So we're moving those students so quickly that we're expecting them to already be proficient and have that strong base by the end of 2nd grade, and many times their academic vocabulary and content knowledge is not strong enough yet to do that. This next study, I'm going to show you first the Spanish assessment results that I have, and then the English. But what this graph shows you is the dark gray is a 90-10 dual language learning context, and the light gray is a 50-50 dual language learning context. I want to explain that a little bit more just so you have a clearer understanding of what those programs look like. So in a 90-10 dual language program, typically starting in kindergarten, 90% of that time is spent in the native language in Spanish, and then 10% of that time is spent in English. As they go up through the years, that percentage goes down until it drops to 50-50. Per Chapter 89, we cannot allow the native language instruction to drop below 50%, or it's not considered a dual language program. So an example would be that if you're at 90-10 in kindergarten, you might be 80-20 in 1st grade, 70-30 in 2nd grade, 60-40 in 3rd, and then 50-50 for 4th and 5th grade. So a 50-50 program typically means that starting from kindergarten, they're receiving 50% of their instruction in English and 50% of their instruction in Spanish. So if you look at this, in Spanish, the 90-10 students are outscoring the students that went through the 50-50 program in all areas. In this next slide, we're looking at English language tasks, and we do see here 2 areas out of the 5 that are lower for the 90-10 students. And so what I want to point out is, as we talk about this data and the program that we're moving to, is that typically in the 90-10 program, there is not an English language arts block from kindergarten on. And so that would be most likely the reason that we are seeing a lower results in irregular words and passage comprehension, just because there hasn't been targeted language arts instruction from the very beginning. So I want to speak a little bit to why we have, why this is important to us and how we've considered this as we move forward in our work. Our program, as I talk about it more in a few slides, we are going to start the English language arts block beginning in pre-K, so that the students are exposed to that every single day from pre-K up until 5th grade. So very traditionally with many of the more common programs that are seen across the state, they don't start in a 90-10 model, the actual language arts instruction in English until 2nd grade, and we don't want to create a gap for our students, so we will begin that instruction in kindergarten. Also, I want to point out here that these students are in 2nd and 3rd grade, and they're achieving these scores. Many times, I would just say in the United States, not just Plano, but we're waiting until students are at the high school level to teach a 2nd language, and our results are not giving us these kind of bilingual, biliterate students, so this is one way to achieve that for our students. I also, though this is looking at elementary, I also want to point out that something that's happening across the country and also here in Texas is a biliteracy seal that's available for diplomas. Texas does have a state-approved biliteracy seal, and that is something, as we move towards dual language, we will be able to offer our students as we create a plan around that. The benefits of that is, one, for students to see the tangible benefits of being bilingual and biliterate, and then also as a district you can choose to enter the names of those students into a bank where both universities and employers can look up students that might qualify the needs of what they're looking for. So it's a great benefit for our students. Okay, so now we're going to look a little bit more at PISD implementation. And so, as I have mentioned, we do have right now Memorial and Foreman Elementary are using the dual language model for both their pre-K and kindergarten classrooms. As we move forward, pre-K and kinder at both Memorial and Foreman will move up to pre-K, kinder, and 1st grade in the following year. We will then add next year kindergarten and pre-K at our other campuses. So each year, Foreman and Memorial will be 1 year ahead in their dual language than the other campuses. The other thing that I want to point out is that we are doing 90-10 at pre-K, but we will be doing 80-20 starting at kindergarten, so 20% of the instructional day will be done in English from kindergarten. We will then be looking at 70-30 for 1st grade, 60-40 for 2nd grade, and then 3rd through 5th will be a 50-50 program. Okay. So even though this is our 1st year of implementation and it's still on a relatively small scale, since it's only at 2 of our 13 bilingual elementary campuses, this was actually work that was started in 2016 with a dual language design committee. And so from that time, I was lucky enough to be part of that, even though I wasn't in this position at the time, and so were other stakeholders. And so we've been working on a very strategic plan with the Center for Applied Linguistics, with two of the very well-known practitioners that have written Teaching for Biliteracy. And so we have been able to go to many trainings, and we've also been able to take teachers to trainings and bring trainings here for them. So each year as we move forward, we will be spending the entire year previous to implementation training that year's teachers so that they're ready for implementation. Besides the Center for Applied Linguistics, we've also attended La Cosecha, which is probably the most recognized dual language conference that happens in New Mexico every year. We have gotten to go to curriculum training with Teaching for Biliteracy Institute in Chicago, along with a list of other trainings that we've been able to be a part of. Also, as part of this work, it's really educating and working closely with the principals of those campuses so that they can help us make sure that the best practices are happening day in and day out in the classroom, and that all of our philosophies align. Also, along with that, we've created a language of evaluation decision-making guide, a bilingual time allotment chart, dual language classroom checklist for administrators, and a Spanish intervention and dyslexia program so that we can intervene at an earlier age for our students. We also have worked very closely both with our curriculum at elementary level and with specialists in our district and outside of our district to create a scope and sequence that aligns as closely as we can with the scope and sequence of the general ed classroom so that our teachers are still very much part of that team, but taking in mind that we do need to build in time for what is called the bridge, so that in each content area, the students are receiving a bridge over to the other language. So when they are getting science instruction in Spanish, at the end of each unit, they're getting a bridge so that they're also learning that vocabulary in English. That can happen both for content and for grammar and linguistics to show them that there are connections between the languages. So, all that to say, by implementing one-way or two-way dual language programs, schools can expect 1/5 to 1/6 of the achievement gap for English learners to close each year. So I think that along with our several years of planning and hard work is something that we all want to see as our students succeeding and doing better than they currently are.
So in the implementation process, when you get to third grade, I think you said it's 50-50?
Yes.
Are the students considered at that point biliterate? Would that be appropriate to say?
I would say they're on the continuum at that point. I think it's hard to say that you ever reach that ultimate goal of biliteracy. Even as an adult, I can read something new and I really have to use my background knowledge and the academic vocabulary in order to get a clear understanding. It does show that typically by the end of grade 5 that they are reading on grade level or past grade level in both languages. So that's
Okay.
where I would really say as they go through the entire program.
That's really where I was going with that, is at what point are they at grade level reading in both languages? So
Yes, so the data shows us that by the end of 5th grade.
Tali, we always assume that when we talk about dual language or bilingual, the other language is Spanish. What if the other language is different?
So the other it very well could be. Right now, I only spoke about Spanish because those are the programs that we offer. In the future, if we could plan well enough to get the certified teachers and the resources, we could offer a dual language program in one of our many other languages that we have.
So what would be the process for us to decide, even just decide that we want to support another language in the district?
One of the things that I think would help us make those decisions are there are some districts in our surrounding areas that we could go learn from and ask questions to. I think also it really is taking a good look at the resources and the certified teachers that would be available to us.
Is there a way to maybe even leverage students that we currently have that do speak both languages to help students that don't, that only speak one language? I'll tell you where I'm coming from.
Mhm.
It's come from my experience. My older daughter, when she was in second grade, she was born in California, so she spoke English. She also spoke Hebrew because we
Mhm.
speak Hebrew at home. And a friend came over and moved to our district. And I remember the first day of school in second grade, she came home and I was there, and she said, we asked her, so how did it go? Because she only spoke Hebrew. She could not speak a word in English. And she said, oh, it was great. I didn't understand a word the teacher said. The teacher didn't understand a word I said. And so it was just great. But what they did was paired her with my daughter, and she helped her through the transition. So I know that, you know, if we have 10 kids in our schools that just came from another country that's not Spanish speaking, then we're going to be tight on resources. But are there any plans that we have that would help them?
So I think that you would see that happening across the district right now, more by chance than strategically, though. The only reason I would want to make that a very strategic plan is what can happen is that student almost gets put a responsibility of acting as a teacher for that other student, and then they aren't receiving the instruction and the rich content that they deserve because they're doing that. So there are some times where that's appropriate. I think when you look at opportunities to turn and talk and for things like that, but I think as adults we have to be more knowledgeable in knowing how to pre-teach, how to give interventions, and how to pull in extra supports to really serve those students.
Because we have other languages other than English and Spanish. I mean,
Absolutely.
the Canadian, for example.
Or East Texas.
Hey, watch it.
I was going to ask, and my voice is going, I'm sorry. Do we, as we move into this dual language, do we have some way to set up how we're going to measure the results?
Yes.
Because I love that right there.
Yes, I meant to say that, so I apologize for skipping over something so important. But yes, we currently have TELPAS in place to measure English from year to year. We also have MAP, which for the first time this year we're giving in Spanish to students, so it is a way that we can evaluate. We are also working with assessment and with curriculum and instruction to really see what our best tools for assessment are so that they are authentic and give us the data that we want. So apart from those kind of larger scale state assessments or MAP, which is we've chosen as a district assessment, but we also have Fontes and Pinnell so that we can do the reading, their reading levels for IRIs, comparing the two so we can compare English and Spanish. And then we also have Tejas Ley, which gives us great data for the Spanish early literacy.
Great. Quick question. For under preparation and training, how are we helping the parents under preparation training for the dual language students?
So we held several meetings at both Memorial and Foreman, and invited all the parents of incoming pre-kinder and kinder students. We had a great turnout for that, and we started off by showing the graph I shared with you from Thomas and Collier that showed the dotted line and the one-way and two-way dual language. And then I'm giving you a very broad overview of it, but we really talked about also some really culturally responsive pieces along with linguistically so that we could help nurture both the family dynamics plus the academic or linguistic needs of the students. And so the parents have been involved in that, and we also have some more opportunities coming up this year For example, we have the Texas Association of Bilingual Educators conference here, and we can invite parents to that conference, and so they have some really great workshops designed for parents in Spanish and English, so that they can learn more about how to advocate for their own children, and that's work that we will continue to do to make sure that parents are part of and educated about what their students are coming to school every day to learn. Mhm.
Okay,
Thank you.
no other questions? Thank you very much.
Missy, might I make a suggestion? I'm a night owl, but this is even pushing me. Is it possible to postpone until the work session, the report on the bond projects?
So,
It's again at 20 minutes, and then
yeah,
we have at
so,
least 15 minutes of
Tony,
policy.
how long could you do it? How quickly could you do
Well, it
it?
depends on how much detail you want. And we all, the majority of us were on the bus tour.
Right.
You got
Yeah.
to see it kind of in its raw state. And really, my recap is really just kind of, with all participating parties in this district, from some people at the table, some people in the audience, our construction crew, our new construction department. I mean, the whole Plano district was out there helping piece all these
Right.
things together. So mine's really just kind of as much as you want to get into it. A lot of it's on the slides.
Right. Okay, so what's the will of the members here? Do you want to go through this now and give him 5 minutes?
Tammy, were you on the bus?
Or do you?
I wasn't on the bus,
you
but I
want-
read all the slides.
So for Tammy, we need to probably go in
He's
detail.
here,
Yeah.
willing to present.
I mean, I know he's waited this
Yeah.
time, so
Let's take a break, yeah.
yeah, I see both sides of this. So give me some feedback.
I'm willing to listen.
Press forward, 5 minutes.
I'll make sure Yorm doesn't ask anything.
You promise?
Okay.
Okay,
Promise,
so
Dave.
Tony, he's got 5
I
minutes.
got a meeting at 9 a.m., so I'm good.
Okay.
Oh, geez.
Okay, but
Promise, Dave.
the only thing, so this is the end, and then we'll get through the policies and we're done.
Fantastic.
It's because you had to repeat each motion.
So, Tony,
Good evening.
TikTok.
Good evening. All right, well, thank you. First off, I want to thank you very much for your recognition of the new construction department earlier. I know my guys appreciate it. Like I said, again, those guys are hardworking guys all through the school year, but particularly in the summer, I mean, that's their busiest time, and they really were hustling, particularly at the end of the project. Again, a lot of the folks here at the table too, and some of the folks we had in our audience, I mean, everybody was hands on deck for getting these projects open on the 13th, which was kind of a shorter deadline. So I appreciate your recognition of these guys. Some projects that we're completing in 2018, this is kind of a list of them: the Special Education Adult Transition Center. That was the building that we bought, the My Possibilities building. It was already being used as a special education center. We're kind of using it for that same capacity. As Paula mentioned, and she's gone now, it's almost complete. They're still working on it. They've given her a new paint job, really just reconfiguring a select number of spaces, but the majority of that is done. They're really kind of waiting on some casework pieces to kind of fill in. So it's up and operating. All of these that I'm about to talk about are occupied spaces. They're being used right now. And again, like most everything, the contractor piece is kind of transitioning from they own the building and they're working full-time in it to kind of doing evenings and off hours. So it's a good-looking building. I think I've heard people are really happy with the new look, the new paint job on the inside. The Employee Child Care 3 was another building purchase. It was a Montessori school that we turned into an Employee Child Care Center. That was being handled by our facilities guy, Jason Wink. They did, again, some minor renovation work to the interior of it to kind of open it up as a daycare, get it licensed by the state. My understanding is that is also in operation right now as that new capacity, or that new level. Those that were on the bus tour that visited Plano East Senior High School, that was one of the most finished projects that we got into. This was one of those portable replacements. We had 16 portables. There were 4 quads in the back. We wanted to replace those, and we replaced those on the front of the building in what was a 21 classroom addition, first and second floor. Real nice views of the interior pond, and it turned out really well. With some of the additional funds that we had on that project, We also actually were able to redo the counselor suite. Shepton High School has been a project, certainly, for those that have seen it from the street and have been inside it as well. It really has been a major renovation. It was a phased project where portables had to be brought on site. And I think the last bus tour that we had last summer, you got to see how those portables were kind of in place. There was kind of a fenced-in area in the back, and it had its difficulties, but it got working where students were able to get that swing space on the interior of the building, get those students out to the portable so we could take over large chunks of the building and work our way around. It is finally at the end of its transition. Those that have driven by it recently, I think it's got a great new facelift, a nice look from the curb of a new building. I think the principal, Jeff Banner, and folks on the bus tour were very impressed by its new look and thought that this would really draw new students to it and make it an interesting place. It is not without its issues currently, and Robert Dean, our new construction CA guy, is handling those on a daily basis, trying to deal with things as they come up. Pogue is again transitioning to evening and weekdays to kind of finish punch list items and eventually kind of extricate themselves from the project and move off. Gullidge Elementary School, that was complete last summer, the majority of the refurbishment, but with some of the funds that were left over, they were able to replace the chillers, which is kind of what that photo was showing in the lower left corner. Those are up and they've got new AC. Miller Elementary School, this one along with Barksdale were the two refurb elementary schools that we took over this summer. Barksdale had additions involved, so it's continuing to work, but both schools had a majority of their finishes redone, and that's the one that we kind of looked. It was pretty raw on August 2nd. They had a lot. They were working their way from one side to the other with flooring and new casework and paint and everything, and it was dirty and it was rough. But that one has come together. I think both principals are happy with what they've got. Miller was the one where the kitchen was taken over early at spring break, and we did have to cater these last 2 weeks, but the kitchen's now complete there. Barksdale is the one where the temporary serving line is still set up and will be until November, I believe, and that's when they've got the kitchen currently boarded up, blocked off from the rest of the school, and they're working behind the scenes to complete that kitchen. So they're working off a temporary serving line being catered by our Gwen Center, I believe.
So, Tony, if we could just, like, a little bit of information?
Yes. A little bit of
We
what now?
just go a little faster?
Oh, sorry. Yes, I.
A little less
Wilson Middle
detail.
School, it
We can
doesn't
read
look-
the charts.
Wilson Middle School doesn't look like this anymore. It's come together as well. New finishes. It's still doing casework in the evenings, and it's got it's got another piece to it as well. What am I thinking of?
When will Robinson be done?
Robinson's next summer,
Next.
towards the end. And it's a phased project as well. Jasper High School got an art addition and a mat room addition. It will continue to work on its roof through the school year, through the end of the year, and also its third art room. It renovated 3 art rooms. 2 art rooms are done. The art room addition is still being worked on, and that'll be complete about Thanksgiving. The Phase 3 turfs that took from the Clark Triple Fields, the sub-varsity fields, from natural grass to artificial turf, those are complete. Those have also been played on already. Then major renovations that are coming up. We just talked about this sheet here. Robinson Middle School, it's a phased project, a major renovation. It's going to hit all aspects of that building. And it's got portables on site, and they'll phase it all the way through summer of 2019. Hahn and Skaggs are the next 2 elementary schools to be taken over for a similar refurbishment to the Miller Barksdale Rose Hager that occurred. No additions planned there, so those are attempting to, again, just kind of squeeze into a summer. Bowman Middle School will have similar things to the Wilson Middle School, full kitchen remodel, touch-up finishes throughout, paint, and a couple odds and ends from the principal request. Williams High School, it didn't have as much on the bond as the Jasper High School refurbishment, so it's got some select areas where we're just going to kind of go in surgically and replace some plastic laminate panels on the wall that look a little dated, upgrade the bathrooms, and there's a third piece to that as well that I didn't write down, but there's a third element. I think it's rubber base and new paint.
Just an editorial comment,
Yep.
and this is gonna sound unkind. We keep putting lipstick on that pig at Williams. Even though we have to spend money to keep the building going, doesn't mean we're really spending money on the building. I know in the bond, we thought we were gonna put $3 or $4 million in to actually do an architectural study. We were then told by the attorney that we couldn't actually spend the money that way, but we were gonna use it out of operating budget. I hope we do that at some point, because it's not fair for those children. I mean, that building is more than 50 years old. I think we need to really, at some point, authorize that study.
In the middle school, fine arts additions, that's happening at Rice, Renner, and Frankfurt. Those three share the same floor plan. It's basically getting a band hall addition and a rework of the fine arts suite. And then the high school art is at Vines. It's getting 3 larger sized classrooms. That had the ability, was going to be an addition, but they're able to keep it within the building where they won't trigger a storm shelter. So it's going to be 3 art rooms, provided a displacement of some computer labs, but those will be recreated on the other side where the art rooms existed. There was enough space to do that. And then the fine arts addition on that piece is Armstrong Middle School. It didn't match the floor plan of Frankfurt, Rice, and Renner, so it got separated and attached to the high school. To catch up on that, the last piece was just what our facilities guys got through. There's been, passed tonight, the Fine Arts Center is out there in the future. 2020 completion October, that's what the game plan is. Went through that earlier tonight, so I'll pass through that. The district roofing update, these are some old models, but just to give you an idea, these roofs were all completed back in 2017. They were basically repairs, metal coping, and a couple re-roofs, about 15 projects there. We've got another 15 that we've just wrapped up this 2018 as well. So all through insurance proceeds due to the hailstorms. So it's been busy, but things have been successful, and as we get issues, we kind of look to solve them and stuff. So it's good. Any questions?
This is more for
I have a
Sarah.
few questions.
Good.
No, wait, I'm informed that I don't have any questions.
So Sarah, when can we get on the schedule and the budget to actually do that assessment of Williams?
Randy and I have already had that conversation, so we'll talk again and we'll bring that information back.
So I know you know that campus well.
I do know that campus well now.
Put me between the two of you.
You guys, again, did a great job. In a short period of time, really, very sincerely, we thank you for, Juan and all of the individuals that worked on all the projects this
Thank you.
summer and last year. Great job.
Thank you very much.
Except when we did the bus tour, there were no grapes this time.
Yeah, I know who's responsible. I'll talk to them.
No,
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
thank you.
All right. Ready? Hold on. Here we go. Most of our board meetings, we have policies on the agenda for the board's consideration. These policies have undergone prior review for the district's attorney and by each board member. I invite Carla Oliver, Assistant Superintendent for Government, Community, and Planning Initiatives, to introduce the policies we have on the agenda this evening. Ms. Oliver.
Thank you, President Bender. DL local workload is presented for adoption under second reading this evening.
Do I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Trustees adopts policy DL local under second reading.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion from Nancy Humphrey, a second by Yoram Solomon. The Board of Trustees adopts policy DL local under second reading. Is there any further discussion? Was that a hand for discussion?
I'm just waiting to vote.
Okay, we will now vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Motion passes 7-0. Okay, EEB local.
Carly.
EEB local instructional arrangements. This is in regard to class size, and it's presented for adoption under second reading.
Do I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Trustees adopts policy EEB local under second reading.
Do I have a
Second.
second? A motion by Nancy Humphrey, a second by Yoram Solomon, that the Board of Trustees adopts policy EEB local under second reading. Is there any discussion?
I actually have a question. So I was very in favor of doing this because I didn't want to have to add one teacher when we were just over by one student, but I would like to be informed as a board member when we choose to do that. And so is there a reporting mechanism, board update, or something you can let us know when you are going above or below the averages?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay. No more discussion? We'll now vote. All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion passes 7-0. EIE Local.
This policy is in regard to academic achievement, retention, and promotion, and it's presented this evening for adoption under second reading.
Do I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Trustees adopt policy EIE Local under second reading.
Do I have a second?
Really?
Second.
I have a motion by Yoram Solomon, a second by Nancy Humphrey, that the Board of Trustees adopts policy EIE Local under second reading. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll now vote. All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion passes 7-0. Carla.
TASB Localized Policy Manual Update 111. This affects local policies, and it's presented for approval under first reading this evening, and then will be brought back to you at another meeting.
All right, thank you. Do I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Trustees add, revise, or delete local policies as recommended by the TASB Policy Services and according to the instruction sheet for the TASB Localized Policy Manual Update 111 with revisions as noted to policy BBD Local, Board Members, Training, and Orientation.
Do I have a
Second.
second? Oop, Yoram got you. I have a motion by Nancy Humphries, second by Yoram Solomon, that the Board of Trustees add, revise, or delete local policies as recommended by TASB Policy Services and according to the instruction sheet for TASB Localized Policy Manual Update 111 with revisions as noted to policy BBD Local, Board Members, Training, and Orientation. Is there any further discussion? We'll now vote. All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion passes 7-0. That's the last of the policy.
No.
No.
I'll
Like
keep,
10 more.
if it's okay,
Not even
could I
near.
introduce the next policy?
Okay, I don't have, hold on. Let me, 321.
Got 2 more, at least. 3 more. 4 more.
Item E. BE Local.
Okay, BE Local?
Yes. BE Local Board Meetings, it's presented for approval under first reading this evening and will be presented for adoption at another meeting.
Okay, do I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Trustees approves policy BE Local under first reading.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion by Jerry Chambers, a second by Yoram Solomon, that the Board of Trustees approves policy BE Local under first reading. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll now vote. All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion passes 7-0. Carla, FB Local.
FB Local is in regard to equal education opportunity, and it's presented for approval under first reading this evening and will be brought back to you at another meeting.
Thank you. Do I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Trustees approves policy FB Local under first reading.
Do I have a
Second.
second? I have a motion by Nancy Humphrey, second by Yoram Solomon, that the Board of Trustees approves policy FB Local under first reading. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll now vote. All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion passes 7-0. Okay, Carla, FFA Local.
This policy is in regard to wellness and health services, physical examinations. It's presented for approval under first reading this evening and will come back to you at another meeting.
Do I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Trustees approves policy FFAA Local under first reading.
Second.
I have a motion by Nancy Humphrey, a second by Yoram Solomon, that the Board of Trustees approves policy FFAA Local under first reading. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we will now vote. All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion passes 7-0. Okay, GKD Exhibit C, please.
Thank you. This policy regarding community relations is for the non-school use of school facilities, and it's presented for your review under first reading.
Thank you. Do I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Trustees approves the review of Exhibit GKD Exhibit C under second reading.
Second.
I have a motion by Jerry Chambers, a second by Yoram Solomon, that the Board of Trustees approves the review of Exhibit GKD, Exhibit C under second reading. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll now vote. Please, all in favor, please raise your hand. Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you for your support.
That concludes the policies. Do we have any public comments this evening?
We do not.
All right, if there's no further business before the board, the meeting is adjourned. The time is 12:07 a.m.
It's Wednesday. Happy Wednesday, everyone.